Everyone, welcome to the 32nd episode of Social Good Podcast. Today we have with us a special guest. We have Dr. Ysaline, Bourgine de Meder. She is the Executive Director of Effective Altruism Sweden. Thank you so much for joining us today, Isa.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, so whereabouts are you right now? Are you in Sweden?
Yes, absolutely. I am in Stockholm.
Wow, wow. Yeah, tell us a little bit about like Stockholm. Like what's the weather like? How are things over there at the moment?
So we have what we call a Swedish summer, which means that it's rain in the morning and good weather in the afternoon. So very unpredictable.
Wow.
But as the Swedes like to say, there's no bad weather, only bad clothes. So
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So like yeah, like fall is gonna start up in a few weeks, in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited for that. But yeah. Um so I'm terribly excited about effective altruism. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, effective altruism as you know it and then what work do you guys do over at Effective Altruism Sweden?
yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. Effective altruism is an international movement, and our goal is to do the most good. And that means that all the projects that we decide to do are really based on data. So what we
Okay.
care about is to evaluate how many lives can we save
Oh.
and how can we do it in the most cost-effective way.
Got you. How many members are there currently over at Effective Altruism Sweden?
At Effective Altruism Sweden, we have more than 800 members. So I would say that more than maybe a third is located in Stockholm. And then we have different cities in Sweden where we have two, three cities that have other people. And then we have a lot of people living maybe in more rural areas, but that can follow the things online and that work for organization remote and that kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, so I mean I entered like a cohort for effective altruism. It was an online cohort. This must have been a couple of years back, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years ago when I did that. And it was kind of an eye-opening course for me. You know, just like the amount, even with the amount of exposure I got, I completely changed like how I view things, right? So, yeah, could you care to tell us a little bit about like some of your cohorts and how you guys run things over in Sweden? Because I
Yeah, of
understand effective
course.
altruism is a global movement, right?
It is a global movement, but you
Mhm.
have in a lot of countries what we call national groups, which are basically sort of handling the national communities. And so, what we do in our national groups is that we do activities that are being done internationally. For example, we have those fellowships, the one you participated online. We have one also that's going to happen both in person and online. And in those fellowships, we usually it's 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and we give people a view of like what are the problems that are neglected. Because a big part of the movement is to work on things that are neglected, things that can potentially impact a lot of lives, whether human or animal, and that not enough people work on. And so we introduce the concept, we introduce what we call the cause area, all the things you can work on, and then
Mhm.
we talk about very concrete things like skills, for example. Like, what are your skills? How can you use your skills to do good in those different areas? And sort
True.
of calling into question all the assumptions, all the things that you don't necessarily think about, but that once you run the numbers, you realize that one option is much better than the other. And then where do you want to focus your energy? On which
Yeah.
problem do you want to solve yourself? Because there's this individual power in each of us, right? Like things we can master, things we're really good at, and then we can put those things in those different cause areas.
So as I understand it, there's philanthropy and then effective altruism as its own school of thought is kind of like the thinking of how with the resources that we already do have, how can we do the most good? Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely right because we live in a world of finite resources, and most of these resources are not well distributed as well. And so, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to save lives with as little resources as you can. And we're also thinking about a lot of topics that, people feel powerless about very often, things like technology, government, governance, international agreements, all those things feel very overwhelming, right? And so we look at problems and we zoom in on problems and then we say, okay, there's an opportunity here to do good. Why not?
How long has effective altruism Sweden been around?
So we're going to celebrate our 10 years in September. So we're organizing a big day, and I'm very curious about this, eager, because we're gonna invite all the people that were there from the start, and then people who are newcomers. And so much has been done in 10 years that, yeah, it's gonna be very exciting.
Have you been the director over there for the whole time, or how many years have you been with effective
So
altruism
I've
Sweden?
started to work, I started to work for EA Sweden, not as a director, but as a strategist, as in I was really working on like middle and long-term project we could implement for the community. But I became the director in January, so 7, 8 months ago.
And, Um, yeah, how's it been?
It's been it's been a lot. There's so much potential. Basically, what I'm doing is that I'm spending 50% of my time advising people on career. So they come
Oh,
to me with a certain set of skills and a certain ideas on how they can do good. And then we examine, okay, what can you do with those skills? Where would those skills be the most useful? And we also think about what is the most pressing problems, right? Because a lot of
sure,
people are interested in climate, for example, which
sure.
is fair. But
Yeah.
then there's a lot of other problems to solve that are neglected. And so we have this reflection around maybe you could use your skill in other cause area that need also the work and the competence, right? And so we
Right.
have those conversation around meaning that are very interesting. And then the second part is more about with whom can we partner, because the first years of effective altruism, of course, the community needed to be built, right? And so all those
Okay.
organizations were built. But then now what I'm most interested in is how can we collaborate? How can we collaborate
Mm,
with, the
mm,
UN, with policy, with government? Like how can we give those tools out? How
okay.
can we
Okay.
help people think with those tools?
Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, you mentioned you work a lot, on the aspect of people's careers. Like, what does that look like when you're like, I'm sure it's not exactly the same as career advisory, right? Or career counseling. So what does that look like when you're, taking on the lens of EA Sweden in particular?
It's a bit similar as career advising. It's like if Euros come to me, then we're gonna discuss, okay, what are your skills? What are you interested in? What are the things you're good at? One things we work on, for example, a lot is what I call your comparative advantage, because there are things that you as a person, not just in your work life, but you as a person, from the start, you have some qualities, things that your friend and family have always liked in you, right? And that come to you a bit effortlessly. And then we're going to talk about, oh, how can you implement that in your workplace so that you can thrive as well? It's like 50% on the individual level, like trying to understand your strengths and weaknesses and the things you're really good at and that make you happy. And then 50% of like, where should you go? Which organization should you work in? How can you upskill to
Really?
know more about this problem? Things like that.
Oh, so it's not necessarily like a financial contribution. It's kind of like where even going down to what workplace I work at.
Yeah, yeah, it's really giving people sort of the tools of the EA
Okay.
landscape and like where can you go, where can you work? What would you need to do to work in this organization?
Yeah.
How can you learn more about the problem? It's really a lot of advising.
So do you normally recommend that they go work for like NGOs or like nonprofits, or what does that kind of look like for someone who's, debating what type of workplace to choose for their next employer?
Yeah, that's a good question because, of course, the thing we recommend to people are we only recommend sort of the most effective institutions because that's really what we're about, doing things effectively. But we also recommend people to work in government or, very big NGOs. Or sometimes we even recommend people to work in corporations because you can have a lot of impact. Let's say if you're a manager in an oil industry, for example, and then you want to change things from within, like that's also a thing. And
True.
there's no like eh, like impact looks different for everyone depending on their skills. And so, of course, we recommend first and foremost the charities or the organizations that we know are very effective. But sometimes, especially when it comes to AI, for example, or animal welfare, we also recommend people to go into policy, to be in government, because that's where things are happening, right?
So, I mean, what does that like route look like? Do you like work on kind of like knowledge, like spreading the knowledge about different schools of thought on those different like areas, like animal welfare or climate justice first? And then, or do those people come with already an idea in mind of, I want to work towards climate justice, or I want to work towards animal welfare, or refugee, you know, immigration rights, or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes people come with a cause that, speaks to them a lot. And then they
Hmm.
say, hey, I want to do good within that area. How do I do that? And sometimes if it is within our, realm of possibilities, then I tell them, sure, if you want to work on land immigration, this is how you should do it. Uh, but sometimes people want to work on things that our research has not shown is, the most effective. And so then we ask people, okay, but we know that this thing that you want to work on is important, of course, but you could have a greater impact, a greater difference in working in other areas. And then what do you decide? And here, there's no positive or negative answer. It's really personal. We never tell people,
Okay.
oh, you should do this, absolutely. We tell people, this is the array of options you have, and this is where you can be the most effective. And is that something you want to do? And sometimes
What's an
people
ex
say, no.
what is an example of that? Like, how might one person be more effective working in like one department than another?
Yeah. Well, if I take the example of, for example, Uh, let's see. If we take climate, for example, 90% of the money in climate goes to green energies. And of course, green energies are supremely important, right? But a lot of people are already doing this, and there's already a lot of funding for this. So instead, we're going to tell people, well, but biodiversity is a bit abandoned. It's not as politically sexy. And yet, if you work on biodiversity and mangroves and different environment and like things like this, then we need people there. So maybe you can look at organizations that do that and then make your own mind around, oh, yeah, maybe that sounds more impactful. I'm going to work there.
And do you follow through? Like, do you advise them throughout? Is this like an ongoing, continuous type of program, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's like
Sweden, anyway.
yeah, at EA Sweden, we do it a bit differently than in other career coaching organizations in effective altruism because we have decided to take a different approach because I think the good thing with our coaching is that we're very comprehensive, which means that sometimes people don't know anything about effective altruism and they need a conversation to understand, and then I give them a lot of links and things to read, and then they get more knowledgeable. But for the people who really want a job in the area, I follow them through the whole way. Like we repeat interviews, we do mock interviews. I give them feedback on their CV. I connect them to people in organizations. It's a very comprehensive process for the people who want it, right? So it's not just giving direction and then people go in the world. It's really having followed up meetings on like, okay, uh, you have spotted 15 job ads that could be relevant for you. Let's look at your CV for all those job ads because the word of impact has a very special vocabulary, right? It has a special titles and special ways of expressing yourself. And so people need to learn how to do that. So we also do this.
What like what inspired you to work for EA? It's your story.
Yeah, that started as, I was doing my PhD in history at the time,
Right? Right.
4 years ago.
Okay.
And COVID happened, right? And I felt this massive sense of powerlessness. I was being trained in an excellent university, St. Andrews, and it gave me a lot of very good tools to learn how to write and how to think. But then I realized that nobody would read my papers, or very few people would read my papers, and that all this brain capacity that I had was a bit lost because it would not have an impact on the world. And with the COVID, I felt a bit like I need to do my part. I'm learning all those great things, but what is my impact with this career choice, right? And so I typed on Google at 2 a.m. on a Sunday,
Okay.
how can I have an impact with my PhD? And I found 80,000 hours, which is one of our main websites
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
things around career and passion. And I found them, and then I read the whole website in a week, and I realized, okay, those are my people. They think in a way that resonates with me. So then I went to a conference, and then I talked to people that had amazing jobs, people auditing nuclear plants, people working on liberating animals. Like they had such great jobs, and I realized I want to use my brain to do these things. This is great. And then I applied to this job in Sweden, and this is how things went.
So the other thing about jumping back to effective altruism in Sweden that I wanted to ask you, is how do you guys like market yourselves at all, or how does that happen? Because that's quite a number of people joining, and so I'm kind of curious as to that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so we're a small NGO, right? So we don't have a lot of budget for marketing. So we have to be very selective about the marketing we do. So our main platform is LinkedIn because we really want people to think about their careers when they come to us. Of course, effective altruism is like a philosophy movement, and there's a lot of like philosophy things that you can, and it can really change your vision of life. But I think we want to encourage people to take action, really, the doing part. And so we do a bit of communications on LinkedIn, and it's a lot of word of mouth as well, because when you
Mm,
get to meet effective altruism, and then you will talk about it to all your friends because you're so excited about it, and that is something that works quite well. We also organize events. So, for example, we go to career fairs at universities, or we organize our own events, our social events, and then people come and they can chat about things. And, they're surrounded by like-minded people because, oh, finally someone who cares, right? That's great. And then they start thinking, oh, I should invite my friends. So it's a word of mouth sort of process.
I see.
But of course, that's Effective Altruism Sweden, which is, one country. But then
Yeah.
Effective Altruism as a movement has a website, and then they do some kind of outreach and all of that. But us and them are a bit different in that sense. Like we only control our effect over Sweden, right?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that it's mainly word of mouth because of the sheer size of, EA Sweden. But I guess it has been around for maybe longer than some of the other chapters. Do you guys like work sometimes the joint work or like cohorts with other chapters as well, or is it kind of like inbred in Sweden?
Yeah, sometimes we
I don't know
do.
if that's the right word.
Especially in the Nordics, because we're very close to our Nordic counterparts. So, Effective Altruism Norway, Effective Altruism Finland, we know them. For example, we had 2 weeks ago, we had a retreat called the Nordic Organizer Retreat Group. And so all the leaders from the Nordics came, and then we shared how to do community building, how
Right.
to market better, how to career coach people. And so we do work, I would say, on the sort of regional level with the Nordics a lot. And then, of course, I know, we're within a network with all the other countries where we exchange good practices and tips, and we try to work on things. And so
Yeah.
often we have, for example, uh, right now I will refer someone that wants to go to work in France, and I will connect them to the
Mhm.
director of EA France, right? So there's a
So you
lot of
guys are very, very well like interweaved and interconnected. That is so good to hear. Especially with the goal of effective altruism. So, what are like some of the most pressing issues that like people are working on, I guess? Like, if you could rank the top like three, I don't know, three to five, what are the most like ones that are like the hottest issues at the moment?
yeah, yeah, of course. I think maybe one that is very important is the risks from AI models. Because this concentration of power within the US that has a huge effect on society because now everybody is using AI, right? And it can be tempting to just use AI and it's so practical, but there's so many risks associated to it and how it will change societal fabric that we need to look at those risks. So that's one area. Then we also work a lot on pandemics and what we call biosecurity, because with COVID, for example, we saw that it's very easy to put the word at the stop if you don't prevent pandemics. So we work
Right.
a lot on like how can we make those, how can we avoid those pandemics from happening? How can we make those research on viruses and all of that safer?
Yeah.
How can we avoid any kind of terrorist, behavior around, biosecurity and all these things? And that's a thing that nobody wants to think of because it's highly unpleasant, but we need to be prepared, right? That's the movement is a lot around anticipating issue instead of paying more later to solve them. And a third one would be probably animal welfare, because then again, animal welfare is not something that is politically very sexy. A lot of people have not really, thought around the suffering around animals and also the impact on climate. And so we're trying to push those themes forward in the public debate and say, in 40 years, our children might tell us that we were murderers because we're eating meat, right? Because animals also fear suffering the way we do. So how is that happening? So we just want to anticipate, those
So what
concerns.
are some of the ways that are like the best way to like reach like arching areas in society, like us, in companies and I don't know, like through children's school, higher education, what's the best way? Is it through like media? Is it through like laws or how do you guys determine that?
Yeah, there's several ways you can have an impact. I guess one of the biggest is probably regulations. Or really sort of changing the way government think about issues and
Hmm.
helping them to think more strategically.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Participating to, parliaments, the European Commission, the Congress, all those institutions will really encourage our people to go into policy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's also, the research side of things where we have some people researching things that maybe would not be financed by universities or traditional, NGOs, but that we think are important. And then the last thing that we do a lot is entrepreneurship. We have a program called Ambitious Impact. Uh, and you can apply, and if you get accepted, you get to create your own charity on a problem that is very solvable because it's all around measuring your efficiency, right? And so those problems are selected in terms of how can you solve this problem? How can you measure how you're solving this problem? And so we see more and more entrepreneurship happening in those areas, and I think it's really good.
Is that for just for EA Sweden, the ambitious impact?
No, that's international.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll be sure to check it out as well. And I'm sure our audience members are interested as well. So I'm kind of wondering, like, what do you do when, like, I don't know, like, there's so many different issues to tackle, and how do you determine which one gets the most attention and energy?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think it's something that we're, constantly thinking about. And the way, as in, we don't have all the answers, of course. All we do is just like
Seems like you
We
guys.
uh, we prioritize a lot. I would say that's a very important word. We
Oh
prioritize.
man, scary word. In leadership,
We
I
look
think.
we look at what is a problem we can solve now? How can we measure that we're solving it? And then we try to solve it. For example, one of the best example I have is that there is an organization called LEAP, and they're working on regulations when it comes to lead in the river, you know, this metal uh,
Oh,
that
okay.
can be very bad for the development of adult and kids, right, in low and middle income countries. And so
Hmm.
there are regulations around lead already, but they're not enforced, or maybe they don't exist as much as they should. And so this organization is talking to government and trying to eliminate lead from the rivers. And that's
Yeah.
not something that come to mind immediately when you say, how do you change the world, right? But after some research, you realize that this is very tractable. This is something that you can solve here and now, you know? So that's the kind of stuff we focus on.
Uh, yeah, I guess like what's the best part about working for EA? And actually, yeah, like kind of want to as we were talking, I was kind of thinking through like some of the previous conversations that I've had with my interviewees, and they talk about how like someone who's providing like counseling, sometimes they need counseling themselves. Has that ever occurred to you because of the sheer amount of like workload that and like burden that you actually take on as a kind of as a like a mentor, someone in a mentoring role.
Yeah, yeah, of course. You know, it's we talk a lot with our colleagues and the other group leaders. How can we ourselves, you know, handle the fact that you hear about those problems every day and sometimes it feels
Yeah,
overwhelming, right?
yeah.
It's like, oh, Trump is
I can
doing
only
something.
imagine. Yeah.
And like, yeah, that's a lot. But I think that the best way for us to remedy that or work on that is that when you work with people that are value aligned and that also want to do good, it gives
Mm-hmm.
so much energy to be surrounded by
True.
people who care. It's such a
True.
contrast with the inertia that you can meet outside. And
Yes.
every conversation I have with my colleagues or people that are doing good already gives me hope and faith. For example, I met this guy called Carl Otto Schell in Sweden, and he's reducing mortality at the ER by 30%, which is huge,
That
just
is
by putting in
that is
place
why. Yeah.
protocols, you know? And when I met this guy, I felt
Wow.
this inner hope, like, oh my God, some people are working on that stuff. This
Wow.
guy is expanding and is saving lives, and that's so fantastic. And I think that is a big, big joy of the work.
And do you guys like vet through applicants who want to join EA? Are you guys like very selective to make sure that people are value aligned?
Yeah, we do it in a way that is a bit, you could call it automatic, because we do organize events where we invite everyone, no discrimination. But then we're very clear about the fact that we are a community where we care about doing good, right? So usually that weeds out people that do not align. And then when it comes to coaching, we
Yes.
do, um, unfortunately, there are some backgrounds that are difficult to work with because the skills are difficult to transfer. And so sometimes we tell people, I mean, certainly you can go into those areas, but that will ask for a lot of work and a lot of upskilling. And, maybe there are other ways you can have an impact. Like you can give to effective charities. Like that's also a very good way. Or maybe you can have project on the side. But basically, we give people options, but that doesn't mean we tell everyone, oh, for sure you can work somewhere, right? Because we have to be realistic as well about the job market and how things work.
How much of your how much of your work is helping people to donate to charities at EA Sweden?
Yeah, we work with, we have like a sister organization in our office, and we work closely with them. They're called Give Effective or Gi Effektivt in Swedish. And they do this part of the work of reaching out to people to tell them that their donations could be much more effective if they gave to those charities. And so what we do is that we don't really focus on it because this sister organization is doing it, but what we do is that we refer people to this organization, people who do not necessarily want to change career, but they still want to have a big impact on the world. And then they talk to this organization, and then they get to know more.
And what is the best part of working for EA Sweden for you, Dr. Ysa?
Yeah, when I was doing my PhD, I loved the research, but it felt a bit abstract. And I think what I love to do most here is that I can see the fruits of what I'm doing very fast. For example, the first 2 years I spent at EA Sweden, I focused on improving its diversity because we had an imbalance between men and women. We had 70% of men and 30% of women. And that makes sense because there's a lot of computer science people, and that selectively at university is more men. But I wasn't okay with that. I was like, no, we need an equal amount, right? So I worked a lot on this, and that work was
Oh,
hard, but it
nice.
was also so rewarding to see then,
Mm,
after
yeah,
our policy change, more and more women coming in career coaching at social events, and the whole
very
mood of the
nice.
atmosphere, changing because
Mm,
it's so much nicer when there's, parity, right? So
mm.
I think seeing things change live is really, really nice.
Okay. Yeah, I super commend you on that. I don't by any means doubt that that was an easy task to take on. So I do commend you on that. And where do you see EA Sweden going in the next, like, for the rest of 2026? Does that, yeah, and where do you see your career going as well, given your background as a policy researcher?
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question because the world is changing so fast that sometimes it's hard to know what to do. But I'm very happy to report that we're gonna hire someone else very soon, which feels really good. We're gonna hire a career advisor.
Oh.
So I think we're gonna do more and more coaching because that's one of the most impactful thing we can do.
Mhm.
Uh, but then I also want to expand, EA Sweden reach within Swedish society. So I want to connect more with government, with other NGOs, understanding how other NGOs work, how we can collaborate. We already have some connections. I want to really reinforce them and maybe have project together. And for me personally, one thing that I realized I love doing is policy advocacy. I realized that I was a good researcher, but I'm an even better networker. And I don't mind not being an expert because what I like the most is to gather the right people in the room to sort of fast track progress. And I've been doing quite a lot of that when it comes to AI and AI safety and AI governance. And that could be a path. That could be a path around advising government or working for a think tank on those issues, for example. Um, because this networking part and this sort of human part is really the part I love the most. It's like putting people's skills together and really accelerate things.
Work like hand in hand with government, with municipalities, or what is that process like for an NGO like EA?
Yeah, we're trying to do that more and more. I mean, at TI Sweden, we're a bit small, so I mean, we had some contact with the government, and I organized some dinners around, AI and how can we limit the damages and how can we create like a trustworthy AI.
Yeah.
So with different ministries, but internationally, we have people working with the European Commission and with the Congress, and those people are doing the work, yeah, with policy, talking about things like data privacy and talking about things like a fair redistribution, anticipating the effect of AI on the job market and submitting policies, to mitigate these things. Like that is something that we're doing internationally. Yes.
So you guys have dedicated staff at EA Sweden working um on the government side of things as well.
Not really. I mean, technically, we're only two people working for EA Sweden, but our members work in those different organizations, right? So we're not
I
paying
see, I
them,
see.
but they're being paid by the government or by
I see.
different organizations, and we
And
just help them getting into it.
what's the retention rate like for for EA members?
What do you mean by that?
Well, like people who go like who receive like career counseling or who go through your program, like do they stick with the program for a long time or um
Yeah, it depends a lot. I think a lot of people are in EA a bit like Tinder, you know? They get to know about the ideas and they get to understand the problem they want to work on. And then they find a job there and then they go work in that job and maybe they leave the community because they have found their purpose, right? But some other people really use EA as like a social environment where they make friends and they come back repeatedly and all of that. And so I would say that maybe two-thirds of the people stay sort of around and for the socials and keep reading about these things, and maybe one-third goes to work directly to these things, and then they just disconnect from the community because they found what they wanted, right? So
yeah.
it's different path.
Okay. And do you guys have your cohorts like in like regionally in Sweden, or do you guys also offer like hybrid or of online remote cohorts as well?
Yeah, we do in person in Stockholm, but we have one cohort in person, but we have two other cohorts online. So then, for example, last year we had someone from Zimbabwe attending, you know, so
Oh,
it doesn't really matter where you're from.
interesting. So it can be there's like that potential to be very intercultural as well. Okay, nice. Yeah. So what is your favorite part about working for in Sweden?
EA Sweden is a bit special in my heart because, and here I'm not completely objective, right? Because I work for it, but uh, each EA group, each national group has like a different flavor. And I think the flavor at EA Sweden is that Swedish people tend to be very polite and respectful and caring. And we really have a very wholesome atmosphere. When we have socials or when we have events, people tend to be very open and tender, and there's a lot of respect, and there's good communication. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you're 50 years old and you just get into it, or if you're just 18 and you get into it, you know, it's as long as all the values are here, you know, you just will go into interesting topics and it's going to be enjoyable. And I think in Sweden we have this a bit of this coziness that I didn't find elsewhere, um, that I'm very happy about. Or when we organized our conference, we have our big conference in April, EHX Nordics, and the style is a bit, you know, this Swedish minimalism, like everything is pretty aesthetics. Like it matters too, you know, because then people feel they're in a space that is nice to be in, and you know, so it's that kind of culture that we have, and I like it quite a lot.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad that you have kind of, in a way, found your calling in working with EA Sweden. Not only that, but the amount of work that you guys are doing to do that in society. So, I really applaud you. And yeah, I'm, um, very, very cognizant of the fact that, it's very special work you guys are doing, right? Yeah. And do you guys receive funding from like grants or where do you get your funding?
Yeah, so just like other EA national groups, we receive funding from the same funder. And this funder is called Coefficient Giving, which is the main EA funder. So it's philanthropy, private individuals. And then, yeah, it's like they decide which project to fund. So they fund us, but they also fund direct work in, you know, AI, biosecurity, all of that. And so every year we apply for funding to this funder, and we have to give what you call an impact record track, which is like this report where we say all the things we have been doing this year that justify us being funded again, right? And so every year it's like open to consideration if we get the funding or not.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ysa. It was such a pleasure and I learned so much from you. Where can our audience find you, Dr. Ysa, and your work with effective altruism in Sweden?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Where can the audience find you?
Oh, sorry, yes. So we have a website called Effective Altruism Sweden. Maybe I can send it to you and you can put it in the
Sure, sure.
um,
Will do.
or they can find me on LinkedIn if they're interested, and just typing my name, Ysaline Bourgine de Meder, and we can connect.
Will do, will do. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Well, we'll see
Thank
you next
you.
time.
Bye.